Man, oh man, oh man. Another another banger of an episode. Like honestly, at this point, I'm honestly convinced that I'm honestly convinced that pretty much Toei right now with the current stream of One Piece episodes we've been getting is kind of in a bit of a competition with themselves of like how can we keep going? How can we keep topping ourselves? And that's kind of what it feels like Toei keeps doing. They keep trying to find new ways in order to top each new episode each week. Like, okay, we did okay, we there it's like I want to be a fly on the wall during like the production of these episodes and say, okay, we pretty much and I bet it's gonna be like, okay, we pretty much did pretty good during this episode. How can we do better? Like it feels like that's the mentality with Toei right now with all these episodes we've been getting. So yeah, and okay, so I guess so right out of the gate. Uh, so yeah, one thing especially to me. So yeah, um, I guess to pick up from that, uh, even though we only got a glimpse of it from the start of, um, only even though we only got a glimpse from like the start of the fight at the end of the episode, obviously like one of the big questions is how the art and animation within that brief encounter between Whitebeard, Odin, and Roger panned out. And honestly, not only am I feeling reassured that the animation is going to be killer next week, just based on how this episode ended, but I honestly can't. Again, I can't help but feel that the animation keeps getting better each week, even if it's by the smallest of increments. Like something, like again, like I said at the beginning of this video, something I feel is going on with One Piece and Toei lately, where it feels like the animators in general and staff at Toei keep trying, and for the most part succeeding to top themselves from the previous week, and it's really showing in these past few episodes. But man, oh man, the way this episode ended, like that clash between Whitebeard and Roger, like you know these two are monsters. Like you know these two men are monsters when their weapons aren't even touching, and each aren't even and the blades they're wielding aren't even touching at all, and all they're fighting with is like the pure strength of their hockey. Like really, when you get down to it, that's pretty much what that pretty much like clash at the end of this episode boiled down to is that what they were fighting on was just pure unrestrained hockey. And if it's just like the strength of their hockey, like the blades weren't even necessary really when you get down to it, but like yeah, just it was a battle of hockey, and like the insanity of it was insane. um and you don't know who's gonna, and the thing is, it's one of those where you want someone to win, but you don't really care who's gonna win because they're so freaking powerful. Like honestly, like this, if this is the level that one like they're kind of an example of how you almost wonder if Roger and Whitebeard kind of overdid it in the strength department, but at the same time, yeah, that kind of feels like the kind of strength you need to have in order to survive in the new world as well. So yeah, it's what more can I say? It's insane. Um, Now, the episode itself gives us a little backstory on Orochi and a little bit more context on the Kurozumi clan as a whole. And the thing with the history we learn of the Kurozumi clan in this episode is well I want to hold off on going completely in depth into what we learn in this until we get to a certain point, until we get to a certain point, because it's pretty much only pretty much after this specific point where I feel I can go into complete detail about what I feel about like Orochi and his motivations, his goal, his overall character and whatnot. But one th- but one point but one thing to talk about one thing we can talk about is you start to see a lot of just from this one flashback of what's formed Orochi's character, specifically where the core of his hatred comes from. And while I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say the whole history of the Kurozumi clan or what happened to his grandfather or any of that stuff really justifies his actions in the present. Let's just say it's also one of those things where there's not really any heroes here either. And for as much as Odin has attempted to change things about Wano, what happened to the Kurozumi clan is kind of an example of what happens when it does when no matter how hard you try and how hard you try to change things, and no matter how good and pure your intentions are in order to fix the problems about a country, about society, there are some things about history that are harder to change or rewrite. And the Kurozumi clan, the Kurozumi clan is one of those times where not understanding Orochi's past or willing to is where honestly Odin and his father failed, because the Kurozumi are an example of how no matter how much you try and change things, there will always be cracks beneath the surface of those good intentions, and those cracks are harder to fix. And one thing I think that has been prevalent, at least through a large chunk of Wano in the back half of this story, is that for as beautiful as Wano is on the surface, we're seeing more and more of its ugly history, and just how just how deep rooted a lot of the hatred towards a lot of the hatred towards like the populace and the Kozuki clan and all this stuff, like how deep that hatred goes, and really and it's really kind of a failure on anyone's part for just not recognizing any of this, and especially for not recognizing what Orochi was doing until now. Even Yasui in this episode, it wasn't until this point where he finally started to recognize that something was up. He didn't really recognize that something was up with basically Orochi until it was too late. Like when you get down to it, that's kind of what happened here. But yeah, and it's really kind of interesting how the cracks are starting to become more prevalent with we're starting to see a lot more of the cracks of this society and of the society of Wano, and just how it's not exactly all sunshine and rainbows as much as we think as much as it looks to be on the surface. Every country, every area of the world has its own problems, and the Kurozumi clan is one of those is one of those cracks beneath the surface of Wano's beauty. And yeah, getting back to the whole encounter with Roger ending with the Roger ending of the episode, one thing I absolutely love is how we get a greater sense of how powerful Roger was, because before, Roger's strength was always implied to be equal to that of Whitebeard's and many others, but in this episode, we not only get more than a taste of that, but even before confronting Odin or Whitebeard, we see just that an army of Marines laid out. Like, that in itself was enough to say that, yeah, Roger was definitely a top-tier fighter, like, back in the day, and just to rub salt in the wound, Roger goes on and basically picks up one of the Marines, basically insults the Marines by saying, "You want to capture me? Send Garp or send Goku. Other than that, you're all my bitches." Like, I love that. And again, just based on how this episode ended and what we know about the Ed War, like, Roger's not wrong. The man has, just in this episode alone, Roger proved himself that, yeah, he's not exactly pushover. He is the real deal. And although I will say, you do kind of have to respect how Odin just kind of jumps into the fight without even like bothering to really care too much about how strong Roger is or Roger's reputation. Like he just says, I sense a beast. Let's fight. Like, I kind of gotta respect that. I gotta respect that. And I gotta props to Odin just for kind of jumping into a fight. Like it's stupid, obviously, because of how powerful Roger is. But like you kind of gotta respect for just the gusto of trying to challenge Roger. Like I gotta kind of respect that. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and listen to Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.